What happens if you pour compost tea into your sunflower's soil once a month, all season long? Most gardeners think they're already feeding their sunflowers enough, but there's a specific liquid made from something you probably throw away every single day that can turn an average sunflower into an absolute giant. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what's inside this liquid, why it works, and why doing it wrong can actually kill your plant faster than doing nothing at all. Before we dig in, if you're someone who loves growing bigger, healthier plants without wasting money on expensive store-bought fertilizers, hit that subscribe button right now. We post practical, no-nonsense growing tips every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. So let's talk about what we're actually working with here, compost tea. And no, this isn't just dirty water. Compost tea is a liquid extract made by steeping finished, mature compost in water, usually for 24 to 48 hours, sometimes with a little aeration to keep things active. What you end up with is a dark, earthy-smelling liquid that's absolutely loaded with life and nutrition. First, let's talk minerals. Good compost tea contains a broad spectrum of nutrients, but the big three you'll hear about in every fertilizer conversation are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, often shortened to NPK. In compost tea, nitrogen exists mostly in organic forms, bound up in decomposed plant matter and microbial bodies, which means it releases slowly rather than hitting the plant all at once. Phosphorus is present too, though usually in smaller amounts, and it's crucial for root development and flower formation. Potassium rounds out the trio, helping with overall plant strength, water regulation, and disease resistance. But here's where compost tea gets really interesting. It's not just about NPK, it's packed with calcium, which strengthens cell walls. It contains magnesium, a core building block of chlorophyll, the pigment that makes leaves green and allows photosynthesis to happen. There's sulfur in there too, which plants use to build proteins and enzymes. And then you've got the micronutrients, iron, zinc, manganese, copper, boron, all needed in tiny amounts. But without them, plants develop deficiencies that stunt growth even if the big three nutrients are abundant. Now here's the part most people miss entirely. Compost tea isn't just a mineral cocktail, it's alive. When you steep compost in water, you're not just dissolving nutrients, you're multiplying billions of beneficial microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, even beneficial nematodes in some cases. These microbes do something remarkable. They colonize the soil around the plant's roots and start breaking down organic matter into forms the plant can actually absorb. Think of them as a delivery service. The raw materials might already be in the soil, but without these microbes, a lot of it stays locked up and unusable. These microorganisms also produce natural plant hormones and enzymes as byproducts of their activity, which can stimulate root growth and improve the plant's natural defenses against certain soil-borne diseases. There's also a humic acid component in well-made compost tea, which improves the soil's ability to hold onto nutrients and water, almost like a sponge that keeps feeding the roots slowly over time instead of letting everything wash away. So, in short, compost tea is water, minerals, and microbial life, all working together. It's not a single quick-fix chemical. It's closer to a slow, balanced biological feeding system, which, as we're about to see, lines up almost perfectly with what a sunflower actually needs to grow tall, strong, and vibrant. Now let's flip over to the sunflower itself, because understanding what this plant actually craves is what makes this whole method click into place. Sunflowers are famous for one thing above all else: speed. These plants can grow several inches in a single week during their peak growth phase, and some varieties can reach 8, 10, even 12 feet tall in just a few months. That kind of explosive growth doesn't happen by accident. It demands an enormous, steady supply of nutrients, especially early on. The number one nutrient a young sunflower needs is nitrogen. Nitrogen is essentially the building block for leafy green growth. It's what allows the plant to keep pushing out new leaves and extending its stem upward. Remember how we talked about compost tea containing organic, slow-release nitrogen? That's exactly the kind of feeding a sunflower thrives on, a steady trickle rather than a sudden burst that can shock the plant or force weak, leggy growth. But nitrogen alone won't get you a strong sunflower. As the plant matures and starts forming its flower bud, its needs shift dramatically toward phosphorus and potassium. Phosphorus fuels root development, which is critical because sunflowers need a deep, strong root system to support their heavy top growth and to anchor themselves against wind. Without enough phosphorus, you'll often see stunted, weak plants that struggle to support their own height. Potassium, meanwhile, plays a massive role in flower and seed development. It's directly tied to how large and healthy that iconic sunflower head becomes, and it also strengthens the plant's overall resilience, helping it handle heat stress, drought, and disease. Then there's calcium, which sunflowers use heavily to build strong cell walls, especially in that thick, sturdy stem that has to hold up a heavy flower head. A calcium deficiency in sunflowers often shows up as weak stems or distorted new growth. Magnesium is equally important because sunflowers have such large, broad leaves, and magnesium is the core component of chlorophyll. Without enough of it, you'll see yellowing between the leaf veins, a classic sign the plant can't photosynthesize efficiently. And don't forget the micronutrients. Boron in particular is essential for sunflowers because it directly affects flower formation and seed set. A boron deficiency can literally cause a sunflower's head to develop poorly or fail to produce viable seeds. Now here's the satisfying part. Go back and look at everything compost tea provides. Slow-release nitrogen for leafy growth, phosphorus for root strength, potassium for flower development, calcium for sturdy stems, magnesium for healthy green leaves, and trace amounts of boron and other micronutrients for proper flowering. It's almost like this liquid was custom built for what a sunflower goes through at every single stage of its life cycle. That's not a coincidence, it's because compost tea mirrors a natural, balanced soil ecosystem, and sunflowers, being such heavy feeders, respond incredibly well to that kind of complete, steady nutrition. When you get this right, the benefits are genuinely impressive. Regular compost tea feeding can lead to noticeably thicker stems, deeper root systems, larger and more vibrant flower heads, and plants that are simply more resilient against pests, disease, and weather stress. Because you're also feeding the soil's microbial life, you're improving the long-term health of that soil bed, not just the plant sitting in it right now. Many growers report their sunflowers reaching taller heights with sturdier stalks that don't flop over in the wind, and flower heads that are fuller with better seed development. But, and this is important, this is exactly where things can go wrong if you're not careful. Compost tea is not something you can just dump on your plant carelessly and assume more is better. If your tea is too concentrated or if you apply it too frequently, you risk what's called nutrient burn. This happens when there's too much nitrogen or too much soluble salt content hitting the root zone at once, and it can actually scorch the roots, causing wilting, browning leaf edges, or stunted growth almost overnight. There's also a hidden danger with poorly made compost tea. If your original compost wasn't fully broken down, or if the tea sits too long without proper aeration, it can develop harmful anaerobic bacteria, the kind that produce foul-smelling compounds and can actually introduce plant pathogens instead of beneficial microbes. Pouring that onto your sunflower does more harm than good, potentially introducing root rot or disease straight into your soil. Timing matters too. Apply it at the wrong stage, like right when a young, fragile seedling is just establishing itself, and you can overwhelm a root system that isn't ready for that much biological activity yet. So the takeaway here is simple. Done right, this is one of the most powerful, natural ways to supercharge a sunflower's growth. Done carelessly, it can genuinely stress or kill your plant. The difference between those two outcomes comes down entirely to how you prepare and apply it, which is exactly what we're covering next. Let's get practical. Here's exactly how to prepare and apply compost tea to your sunflowers, step by step. Step 1. Start with quality, fully finished compost. It should look dark, crumbly, and smell earthy, not sour or rotten. If it still looks like recognizable food scraps or smells unpleasant, it's not ready yet. Step 2. Get a clean 5-gallon bucket and fill it about 3/4 full with dechlorinated water. If you're using tap water, let it sit out for 24 hours first, or use rainwater, since chlorine can harm the beneficial microbes you're trying to cultivate. Step 3. Add about 2 to 3 cups of your finished compost into the water. You can put the compost into a mesh bag, an old pillowcase, or a paint strainer bag to make straining easier later. Think of it like a giant tea bag. Step 4. If you have access to an aquarium air pump, drop the air stone into the bucket and let it bubble for 24 to 48 hours. This aeration step dramatically boosts the population of beneficial aerobic bacteria. If you don't have a pump, you can still make a simpler version by steeping and stirring vigorously 2 to 3 times a day for the same time period, though the aerated version tends to be more potent. Step 5. Once it's ready, strain out the solid compost, either by lifting out the bag or pouring the liquid through a fine strainer or cheesecloth. You should be left with a light brown, tea-colored liquid. Step 6. Dilute it before applying. A good general ratio is 1 part finished compost tea to about 10 parts water, giving you a mild, safe concentration for regular feeding. Never apply it full strength directly to the root zone. Step 7. Water your sunflower thoroughly with plain water first. If the soil is dry, this helps prevent root shock and ensures even distribution of the tea afterward. Step 8. Pour the diluted compost tea slowly around the base of the plant, focusing on the root zone rather than directly on the stem or leaves. For a mature sunflower, about 1 to 2 liters of the diluted mixture is typically enough per feeding. That's it. Simple, low cost, and incredibly effective when done consistently and correctly. Timing is where a lot of growers either win big or accidentally sabotage their own sunflowers, so let's break this down clearly. First, when you should absolutely avoid using compost tea. Don't apply it to very young seedlings that haven't developed their first set of true leaves yet. Their root systems are too delicate for even a diluted feeding at that stage. Avoid applying it during extreme heat, especially in the middle of a hot afternoon, since this can stress the plant and cause the liquid to evaporate too quickly to be absorbed properly. Also, skip application right before or during heavy rainfall, since the tea will simply wash away before the roots have a chance to take it in. And never apply it to soil that's already waterlogged or poorly draining, since adding more liquid on top of soggy soil increases the risk of root rot. Now, the ideal conditions. The best time to apply compost tea is early morning or early evening, when temperatures are cooler and the plant isn't under heat stress. This gives the roots time to absorb the nutrients before the sun is at its peak. It's also ideal to apply it to soil that's already slightly moist, not bone dry and not soaking wet. Slightly moist soil allows the liquid to spread evenly through the root zone instead of pooling or running off. As for frequency, once your sunflower is established, with a few sets of true leaves and clearly rooted in place, feeding it with diluted compost tea once every 3 to 4 weeks throughout the growing season works incredibly well. That monthly rhythm mentioned in our title isn't just a catchy number. It genuinely aligns with how sunflowers process and use these nutrients without becoming overloaded. Feeding more often than that, especially with a stronger concentration, is where the risk of nutrient burn we talked about earlier really starts to creep in. Consistency and moderation are what make this method work. So how quickly will you actually see something happen? Realistically, within the first 7 to 10 days after your first application, you'll likely notice a subtle but real difference. Leaves that look a little glossier, a slightly deeper green color, and new growth that seems a touch more vigorous than before. By the 2 to 3 week mark, especially if you've kept up that monthly feeding rhythm, you should start seeing more noticeable changes: a visibly thicker stem, faster vertical growth if your sunflower is still in its growing phase, and stronger, more upright leaves that aren't drooping. By the time you're a full month or 2 into consistent feeding, especially once the plant reaches flowering stage, this is where it really pays off. You'll likely notice larger flower heads, a stronger stalk that holds itself upright even in decent wind, and an overall plant that just looks healthier and more robust compared to sunflowers grown without this kind of feeding. Some growers even report noticeably improved seed development at the center of the flower head, with fuller, more filled-in seed patterns by the end of the season. It's not an overnight miracle, but it is a steady, visible transformation, and once you see it for yourself, it's genuinely satisfying. And that's the full picture of what happens when you feed your sunflowers compost tea every month, a simple, natural liquid that, when made and applied correctly, can genuinely transform how your sunflowers grow, from root to flower. Nature already gave us this tool, we just need to use it wisely. If this video helped you understand your plants a little better, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments if you're going to try this on your own sunflowers this season. We've got plenty more practical, real-world growing tips coming your way, so make sure you're subscribed and ready for the next one. Until then, happy growing, and I'll see you in the next video.